We're here this afternoon at the National Seashore, which is we're here with the Superintendent of the National Seashore, George Price.
That's right.
How you doing, George?
Very good. How are you?
Good to meet you.
Welcome.
Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit for our viewers here?
Sure. As you said, I'm the Superintendent of Cape Cod National Seashore, which is out here on the Cape. And I've got to do this because everybody says, here's the Cape. It's basically an arm that protrudes out into the Atlantic Ocean here in Massachusetts. And basically, the National Seashore is all of the outer arm. We're 44,000 acres. That basically goes from 6 towns, from Chatham all the way up to Provincetown. Right now, we're at the Salt Pond Visitor Center in Eastham, Massachusetts, and we're looking out at the Salt Pond and the Great Marsh, which heads right out to the Atlantic, which is a pretty neat place to be. And this is where an awful lot of people come. This is one of our visitor centers. And basically people come here for our visitor centers and for our beaches. We have 6 lifeguarded beaches over all of that territory. They also come to hike the trails. We have miles and miles of trails. And we have different types of geography. So here we obviously have one of the ponds as well as our salt marshes. And when you head up to Wellfleet and Truro, it's more like upland forest, and by the time you get up to Provincetown, it's all sand dunes. So we have the parabolic dunes up there. So I hope you might be able to get up to the Province Lands Visitor Center.
We're going to check out the Provincetown, and
Yeah.
We're actually going to get to ride and check out some sand dunes. I don't know.
Arch sand dunes,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. So we'll get to check that out.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Do you how many visitors do you?
We get between 4 and 5 million visits a year. We're in the top 10 of visitation for national parks around the country. We're part of the National Park System, so we're one of 407 units of the National Park Service. So everything from Yellowstone and Yosemite to Acadia to Gettysburg Battlefield. And in 1961, President Kennedy signed in legislation for the creation of the Cape Cod National Seashore. So we're the same type of people that bring you all of those resources, basically our country's most significant natural and cultural heritage sites. And the National Park Service will be celebrating its centennial next year. So in 2016, we'll be 100 years old as an organization, which was put together by Congress and the President in order to manage these national parks. The very first national park created was in 1872 at Yellowstone. So between 1872 and 1916, there were a number of units that were formed by both the Congress and the President as individual sites. And in 1916, they came together as a system.
That's interesting. Really, it sounds like President Kennedy, since we've been here, we've learned he's done a lot for this area.
That's right.
He's done, and what makes the National Seashore such a great landmark? You know, what?
Well, I think for a couple of reasons, and part of it has to do with your neck of the woods, believe it or not.
North Carolina.
Well, the Carolinas in general, because of the great outer beaches that you have there. Basically, in the 1930s, there were a lot of people in this country that were concerned about all the open beaches on the Atlantic Ocean being developed and commercialized. I grew up in New Jersey, and let me tell you about Atlantic City and Asbury Park and all the places I grew up. Well, people there defined it as really commercializing, put up boardwalks, put up hotels and everything, did the same thing in Miami Beach, did the same thing here in Massachusetts at Nantasket Beach and Revere Beach. And in the 1930s, these environmentalists said, isn't there some place we can set aside to protect this area? And Cape Cod was mentioned, Cape Hatteras was mentioned. And in the 1930s, Cape Hatteras actually was pushed through as a unit of the National Park Service. Here at the Cape Cod, ours didn't happen until after World War II in Korea, when the concept came up again, plus the people on the Outer Cape were concerned about dealing with all this visitation. So they invited the National Park Service to come in and help design this unit among the 6 towns. So when you take a look at the National Seashore, we talk about obviously the great natural wonders. We also talk about the cultural sites. We have the Captain Penniman's house. He was one of the wealthiest whaling captains of the 19th century, mid-19th century house. We have a number of lighthouses. We have the oldest lighthouse on Cape Cod, Highland Light, which is operated by Eastern National. You can actually take a walk to the top. We have an example of a Cape Codder from the 1700s. So a Cape Cod house.
Oh.
Get it?
Yeah.
Came from the design of a very practical type of building construction that was done on the Cape. And in the Seashore, we have a prime example of what one looked like. And sometimes you'll see a half Cape with only 2 windows in the front, sometimes a 3/4 Cape with 3 windows, and sometimes a full Cape with all 4 across the top.
Huh.
So it was a very practical style of construction here in New England.
Well, how often and when can folks come to National Seashore and expect to be able to visit all of this that you have got?
Well, we're open year-round. I mean, let me tell you, this is an amazing place, especially in the fall and the winter.
Really, in the winter?
Oh yeah, there's a lot fewer people. It's amazing to go out on the trails if they're safe and there isn't ice. Just to hear the difference in nature when you're out there. Walking on the beach in January and February is just a magical time, I've got to tell you. The night sky and everything. Obviously, a lot of the places in the midwinter are closed. A lot of the stores and shops, you'll have to search for a restaurant. But our visitor center is open year-round. The trails are open year-round, and you can certainly wander around and see what's going on. Basically, things start to really pick up with visitation in the late spring. Obviously, we're here the week just before 4th of July week, so you'll see a lot of people. By the end of July and into the middle of August, it'll be packed. So if you don't like a lot of people, that's not the time to come. But after the schools go back, the end of August and into September and October, it's downright magical.
Well, can you camp out? Is there any campgrounds? Or?
There are campgrounds on the Cape, none that the National Park Service actually operates.
Okay.
And we don't operate them because there's private campgrounds.
Okay.
But there's Nickerson State Park, which is not too far away, that has a lot of sites. The North of Highlands camping area, there's another campground up in Provincetown, so people can camp. A lot of the camping's what's called primitive, not too many amenities, clean bathrooms, and a place to put your tent. We have a lot of motel, hotel type accommodations, a number of guest houses, a number of bed and breakfasts. So there's a lot of accommodations people can find.
So no matter what you're looking for, you'll find it on the National Seashore.
Well, you find it between the National Seashore and the immediate community. I think a visit to Cape Cod isn't just within the bounds of the seashore. If you get a chance to drive into downtown Wellfleet, for instance, I don't know if you're into oysters, but Wellfleet oysters are world famous, and this is where they come from. We also have, the clamming. Obviously, we're known for clam chowder. And Cape Cod Reuben, highly recommended. It's a piece of fried fish with all the other fixings you put on a regular Reuben.
Okay.
And it's really a tasty thing. And if you get up to Provincetown, there's a lot of Portuguese people that are settled up there. So Portuguese kale soup is good. One of my favorite restaurants has cioppino, which is actually more of an Italian fish stew, and it's terrific. I'm getting hungry already. So
you can find anything you want between food and travel and just all kinds of stuff. And so next time you're in Cape Cod, you certainly need to stop by and check out not just the National Seashore, but everything around the immediate area.
You get up to Provincetown. When you get out to Arts Dune Tours, it's really great to take you over the dunes and you see some of the dune shacks. The other thing you'll see in Provincetown is a large monument from the turn of the last century. It's called the Pilgrim Monument. Did you know the Pilgrims actually came to Cape Cod before they went to Plymouth?
No, I didn't know that. I've
actually
read that history.
Right out here, see beyond the barrier beach out there? Way in the distance, the Mayflower actually sailed up and down the coast here. And then they landed in what's now Provincetown, Massachusetts. And it was there that they actually wrote the Mayflower Compact. And they explored the whole Cape Cod area, Cape Cod Bay, for a place to settle. And in Provincetown, they didn't find a lot of good water sources, and they ran into some issues with some of the Native Americans who weren't so pleased about them raiding their winter stores, and they ended up going across the bay to Plymouth. And the 400th anniversary of that celebration will be coming up pretty soon. So there's a lot of history here.
Definitely, there's a lot of history. Well, I thank you for your time, George, and I certainly appreciate you letting us know all this.
Well, that's great. I hope you come back and visit again.
We will. Well, I think we're going to send some people your way.
I hope so.